I don't know, but people began to show up and hang out at the mountain. And over the years, this was like, like in 79 and 1980 when it kind of started. It's become this incredibly, it's like we're fabulously successful, on so many levels. And the biggest reflection of that is the fact that all these people have moved here. It was really the impetus for other communities starting, people buying Ida because there was no more room up at the mountain, and maybe they didn't like everybody who lived there, and then Pumpkin Hollow, and then Lamar bought land, and then Neil bought land and divided it up, and so there's just this gigantic neighborhood now.
Of mostly men.
Mostly men.
Mostly white.
Mostly white.
Mostly gay.
Right. So that's what's happened, and here we are.
Is that the climate in the 50s and the 60s was a horribly oppressive, dangerous climate, and if you were queer, you were scum, you were subject to being arrested and incarcerated or put in a mental hospital, signed in against your will. Anybody could do that because it was a sickness, it was a terrible disease, it threatened our children. It was something that people did not want known about them. And there was a lot of guilt carried around about it because of the public attitudes towards being gay. It was filthy, it was nasty, it was depraved, it was degenerate. And so, when you get stuff like that thrown at you all the time, after a while some of it comes home. I think we were relatively fortunate because there was a good solid community where we grew up. We weren't alone the way a lot of gay people are when they come out, especially in small towns. We had a very active community, a very active society.
Beach, it was like that kind of place.
There was a gay beach, there were gay bars, there were gay clubs, yeah, but you still could be arrested.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people were. And then at the end of the 50s, the Johns investigations came down, the Charlie Johns investigations. Charlie Johns was a politician. He was a senator from Stark County, Florida. And what had happened actually was that in 1954, a gay man was murdered in Miami by a couple of hustlers. And it got into the paper, and it was scandalous, and it was spread all over the paper, that this diseased faggot was murdered by these poor kids that he was hitting on, and the newspaper started a whole campaign. And it was also right about that time that the civil rights movement was starting to spark.
There was also McCarthyism.
And McCarthyism. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were executed. It was all right around that time.
We were Jewish too.
And right. And there was a committee that was set up under a senator named Henry Hand in Florida, legislative committee set up to keep an eye on civil rights organizations, to try and squelch violence before it got started, kind of to spy on them, and if they thought something ugly was going to happen, then they would arrest everybody. And that committee was taken over by Charlie Johns, who was this senator who fancied himself Joe McCarthy Jr. And he was going to take the NAACP to task because he figured they were a communist front organization and that all of this civil rights activity was really a front for anarchist and communist activity, and he was going to expose them all and blow them apart. And what happened was the NAACP folks took him to court and won the suit, and he freaked out because he couldn't get anywhere with the race issue. So he decided then that he would purge the state of the helpless ones, who were the gays, who had no protections and no police respect and were victimized anyway. So this was yet another victim to add to his list. So he put out a witch hunt in the state universities. University of Florida and Florida State University was going to rid them of the queer faculty who were preaching all of this sedition to the students and was going to get the students, and he did it by first of all, he had plainclothes police in the men's rooms where the gay guys hung out, and they would provoke them, and if somebody made a pass at them, they would arrest them, and then they would take them down and put them in jail and terrorize them into naming other people. And then they would put microphones in the sorority and fraternity houses and in the motels, and they would do a lot of phone tapping, and
It was very weird.
it was really
Even for
really
that time, it was
atrocious,
kinda weird.
and no protections of any kind. I mean, this was like being done in the for the health of our children.
Right. Isn't that why you left the school?
Yeah,
Left the University of Florida to go
You
to
bet.
Miami, so
you
you
bet.
had to deal with him.
You bet, because the detective called me in and wanted to question me, and found out that I had been hanging out with homosexuals in Tampa and thought I had a boyfriend and wanted me to inform.
Oh.
Since I could get along with the queers so well, then surely they would let me know who they were on campus, and surely I would be able to do this for him, because after all, these are very sick people that needed the help of the people that were trying to ruin their lives. So I got the hell out of there and went to University of Miami, which was a private school, which did not allow the Johns people on campus and didn't have to. But the state schools were very much in collaboration with him over this, and a lot of the best professors were fired or committed suicide or resigned in protest over what was going on, and then the students were given a choice. They weren't necessarily kicked out of school. They were given a choice of either leaving school or going to a psychiatrist to be cured. So that went on for quite some. Then they went into the elementary schools, and they started on the elementary school teachers, and it was a really bad time. A lot of people killed themselves over that, and a lot of families were demolished, and a lot of people's careers were demolished. And well, to begin with, gay and lesbian has been co-opted by the money-making industries in America. Corporate America has taken us over now and are putting us out as these beautiful, desirable people to emulate and dress like and act like. And every picture of a lesbian that I've ever seen in the media doesn't look like anything like any of the lesbians I know. Well, maybe a few of them, but not most of them. And so, so it was the same thing with the psychedelic scene. Psychedelia was fabulous in New York in the 60s, and then the corporate America got hold of it and decided to capitalize on it and make money off it, so the whole thing turned sour.
Yeah.
So I guess it'll be the same thing with the collectives, the Back to the Land collectives, all the wonderful green places that queer people are creating now to live in the country and do things in a more healthy fashion and in a more holistic fashion and in a more self-respecting and respecting of other people in the earth fashion. And pretty soon corporate America will get hold of it and misuse it and make money off it and turn it ugly. And we have little signs to lure the tourists, like we did at the expo in Forest Hills. Come see the real queers on the land. Come watch me shit in my bucket. And your mission tickets at the gate. And we'll give you a free T-shirt.
You asked the right person.
Okay, I'm done. You go.
Well, I think politically, on the surface, things have changed a lot, which I'm very happy about. I think there's a much greater acceptance, a much greater sort of live and let live kind of thing everywhere. But that's only on the surface. I think underneath there's still all that, those Baptists and all those people who hate us and let's, my fear is that, God forbid, they should find some kind of a gene, okay? Because what that means is that they're going to know how to get rid of us. If there's a gene, well, all we have to do is get rid of that gene to So I still think that there's that element that's going on that exists in the country, not only for us, but for a whole bunch of people, for blacks as well. That's the one thing. The reason that the sanctuary was created as a gay and lesbian space is because weren't any. There weren't any gay and lesbian spaces. There weren't any queer communities, or if there were some were hidden where nobody knew about them. Okay, and we felt it was important to have a space where, that belonged to us, in a sense, where we could sort of set the rules and create the environment and that kind of thing. So I thought that was a big part of it. Why it didn't just become a community, but it became a gay and lesbian.